I don't need Formula One. I was on the freaking bandwagon. F you, Formula One. Ooh. Kiss my ass. I'm done with it. Many eyes here in this country were all on the capital of Texas. That's Austin. Formula One running on COTA. Yet there's been plenty of news, Statman, prior to this race that, frankly, off the track doesn't look too damn good for Formula One. And I want to spend a little conversation with you guys talking about where Formula One is, where it was, where it is, and where it should be going. But Stat, what's this story in regards to Red Bull may have to, they can't break a bank, but pull out a couple extra ATM cards to pay a fine?
Well, the issue is crazy that the FIA is negotiating with someone who broke a rule to find out, give us a rule that you'll accept and we'll let it go. That by itself sounds crazy, but when you have 20% of the grid, you know, some dispensations are due. But here's a story that I found some credibility with. They're saying that what the FIA offered was a 25% cut in wind tunnel time and a substantial fine. Now, that may not sound like much, but with that cut and another cut from the rules that say if you win a team championship, you get less time than anybody else. Aero is the one thing that sets Red Bull apart from everybody else, with Adrian Newey, the Aero king. So that's a big thing. But the biggest issue in the garage from the teams is, unless there's a big points deduction, this is all from last year where they spent more than 145 million, just a little more, maybe 5% more, but they did break the rule. That's what they're saying. Red Bull says that some of that is misunderstood, that they made some parts that weren't used, that they're in inventory, and we shouldn't be penalized for that. But that's where we are. And, you know, if teams are saying is all they're going to get is a money fine, then people will just pay. That's the cost of doing business in F1, is to get a big checkbook and start writing big checks. So that's where we are. The issue here in America is whether or not all of these strange rules, all of this fines, all of these fines for drivers with jewelry on their, you know, on their ear or in their nose or wherever.
That's $1,000.
Yeah. What's all that mean? Is that going to turn you off? Are you going to jump off the F1 bandwagon because suddenly F1 has more rules and more rubber rules and credibility problems than NASCAR on a Tuesday afternoon? What do you think?
Crasher, you want it first?
That last statement is interesting. More rubber rules than NASCAR? I don't think so. They might be approaching that. But what has soured me is just plain cheating. I don't care what the sport is out there. If it's Major League Baseball, if it's in the NFL, you cheat, you're an ass. That's my point of view, bottom line. So did Red Bull break the rules and go over the cost cap in 2021 and then win the title as well? It's not a good look. It's cheating. Bottom line, there's no way around that. So screw you, Red Bull. And I wanted to be a fan. I love that Sebastian Vettel took 4 consecutive championships for that team, but I don't like what's going on now. Don't go over the cost cap and then win the title. It's just a black eye on the sport. Forget that. I'm in agreement with so many of the drivers in the paddock that say you can't just fine them monetarily and you can't just take away, well, wind tunnel time is pretty significant, but take something else away from their future budgets. A current fine right now is just writing a check. That does nothing.
But how can you, I say the same thing about the Dodgers and the Yankees. If we're going to compare them and hopefully equal other sports that we're fascinated with here in America, they do the same thing, but they go way over their line. They go way over their budget. They get their hand slapped. They got to pay a tax.
Then that's on Major League Baseball. I mean, again, is it working that they just get their hand slapped and make them write a check?
The Yankees are playing in the American League Championship Series. It's working. The Dodgers have made it to the playoffs. No,
it's not working because they're showing that they can spend more money and continue to win championships. No, it's not working. Major League Baseball is failing in that regard, and that's the same road that F1 is going down.
Yeah, well, look at the Golden State Warriors. They won the NBA championship last year, and they just in NBA, if you go over the cost cap, you just pay a fine. It's a percentage of how far you went over, and you just pay some money and keep going. Maybe that's what they ought to have in Formula One.
So what's the issue with this, Crasher? That they went over this gray area, this certain figure by a small amount?
Yeah, it's not a gray area. It's an exact number. It's 145 million, 150 million. I think it's 150 million. What happened just a couple of years ago was teams were spending 350 million. Guess what? Coincidentally, those were the teams at the front of the grid consistently. More money in F1 means more at the front running. And they're trying to curb that. So if they really want to make an effort to curb excessive spending, then you got to do something excessive to punish it moving forward.
Crasher.
Well, the number is 145 million, okay. And they're saying that Red Bull only went over like 7.5 million, but they won a championship, and the drivers are saying that 7.5 million, more than anybody else, makes a lot of difference. Especially the way they run it, that 7.5 million bought in the last lap of the season. And
with this stat, man, what if this was Ferrari or Mercedes doing this? Do you think there's so much angst and negativity from other teams inside the walls of Formula One because of that silver platter championship that was awarded to Verstappen last year?
Well, I think if Aero or Alpine had spent over the budget and finished in the middle of the field, nobody would be saying anything. They said, just rub their shoulders a little bit, make sure they can write the check and keep going. But if you overspin, you break a rule, win a championship, and then the people that make the rules go to you and say, what kind of penalty would you accept? Well, that's gone a little bit too far. They ought to have some rule to make it hard. If they're going to say that this needs to be curtailed and they're going to stand by this, then they need to find a way to make it difficult and painful if they go over the cost cap.
Crasher, I want to jump in here, okay? Mm-hmm. The cost cap doesn't bother me that much. I even took some notes on the airplane today of why I'm just pissed off at Formula One, how I had all four.
Wait, you had to give yourself a notepad for why you're pissed off at Formula One?
Hell yes. You see my life, right?
Okay, valid, yeah.
You want to see my freaking notes? Yeah, they're right there, damn it. The
Formula One, I'm mad at you.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, because you know that Liberty Media is really monitoring this show right about now. The overspending doesn't bother me, frankly. The scam championship last year was a huge disappointment for me. Huge disappointment. So much so they go out and fire the dude who's responsible, but they don't take any. How do I say this for radio without getting?
They're not preventing it from happening in the future.
Well, no, they should have just kicked the ass of this guy. All right, should have beat his ass. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right, that's the big issue I have with him. On top of Las Vegas. Richie, give me a figure. What are the tickets going for Las Vegas? Come on, let's go.
They haven't officially been released yet, but we're expecting it to be in like the 5 digits, probably somewhere around there, a couple $1,000.
Well, it costs $7.77 just to get in line to buy a ticket.
This is so NFL Super Bowl and even the playoffs to a degree where you have two teams in the Super Bowl where probably 70% of the stadium has no attachment to that team. Maybe 30% of that stadium has attachment to both of those teams. These are corporate punks that are taking these seats, and sponsors and executives that are taking these seats of everyday people that like to spend $100, $200, $300 to see their team in the G-damn Super Bowl. So I say, Verstappen, win the championship with 6 races left, and screw Las Vegas. Screw it. You know
wait a minute. No, don't say screw Las Vegas because Miami screwed the public as well.
Screw Miami too. Hell, give the championship to Verstappen the first race of the year. Damn it, you might as well have done it and saved people a lot of. Let me show you something. This is what I was doing last night, 10:30 Central Time at Lucas Oil Speedway. Did you hear that crowd? That
No,
crowd paid $7, $8 to get in and see some of the most badass monster trucks throughout the Southwest and Midwest compete for glory. And the kids were so fired up. They were all there in their Halloween outfits, and mom and dad were happy for 3 or 4 hours because the kids were jacked up because that guy, the tailgater, was the first one to do a backflip. Sorry if you're listening to us on the radio network, but damn it, my point is, it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be $5,000 for a ticket to watch a G-damn Formula One race when you see them go around the track once. Yet monster trucks, you can spend $10, $20, $30, $50 to watch a slew of monster trucks, Feld Monster Jam, and your children are jacked. Listen, that's 2,000 horsepower stat, Crash, Suave. When they crank those things up, I get a little giddy. And that's PG. I get excited. A 10,000-pound monster truck going bonkers and backflips. I don't need Formula One. I was on the freaking bandwagon. F you, Formula One. Ooh. Kiss my ass. I'm done with it.
Okay, and it all started with last year's championship.
That was ridiculous. I wanted to see some, here's a popular word, reparations for Mercedes-Benz or something. It was so stupid and evident that these guys screwed. I don't have Hamilton gear behind me. I got Ricky Carmichael and Pele, and I'm not a Hamilton snorkeler like one person on this show.
Wait.
I'm not. But it didn't even take.
They screwed him.
They did. You could be blind and see that they screwed Lewis Hamilton last year. Yes, there is no arguing that. Anybody who wants to come at us in the comments, there is absolutely no arguing it. Michael Massey, the race official, was fired because of it. That never should have happened.
Even the anchors at ESPN, when they came back from the show, the first thing the guy said was, "Lewis, you got screwed."
Yes.
In other news, and they kept going.
That meanwhile, Formula One will then fine Lewis Hamilton this year because of a nose ring and still not take care of what's actually going on, cheating behind the scenes that affects performance. Yeah, you're screwing your fans, not just with high ticket prices, but with absolutely ridiculous decision making going on. And we were praising this series 2 months ago, praising you, Formula One, saying how much you were kicking the ass of IndyCar. And now we're pissed. We're back to being pissed.
I'm curious to see what the TV ratings were for the U.S. Grand Prix when we get them probably coming up tomorrow or Tuesday. Because remember, Miami Grand Prix was one of the most watched Formula One races in history. ESPN officially announced over the weekend that they've renewed their partnership through 2025, completely commercial free, keeping the Sky Sports coverage. So I wonder if, and you guys have mentioned this before, is at some point Formula One is going to reach that saturation which NASCAR reached back in the early to mid 2000s, where it reached its peak and it just couldn't go any further, and then it's been on the decline for about a decade now. And I wonder if we're slowly getting to that point with Formula One. I think we're still on the uptick right now in the United States, but at some point it's going to start declining. And for now, at least, the Vegas race coming up, I think that might just be the peak. We get to that Vegas race next year. It goes off great. It sells out. People are excited about it, and then we already have a champion decided, so it just kind of falls off a creek. But I was watching the Grand Prix today. I was watching the U.S. Grand Prix over NASCAR, over the NFL today. NLCS Game 5, Phillies going to the World Series. I was watching that over NASCAR today. I think that tells you where Formula One is in terms of my brain. And the race was actually pretty good today, too. It was pretty close finish between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen.
Jeez, Richie, I watched that race today, and it reminded me again of why I'm just don't give a crap about Formula One.
Well,
it was the best race of the year, in my opinion.
Kenny, no. Okay, that might be for the lead. Richie is right. You went outside and started playing with a brown recluse or whatever you were doing out back. The bottom line is there were battles for positions. It might not have been for the lead, but there were 2 by 2 by 2. But if you were watching it, you would have enjoyed that.
The battle for 7th. Yeah, he has no shot at the championship.
But you still want to see side-by-side racing at COTA with the elevation changes.
Side-by-side racing in Formula One?
It happened.
It happened on the last lap of the championship last year.
Yeah, it did. And the winner got screwed.
Jesus,
yeah, you're right. You're right. Valid.
He was wondering when I was going to have a slowly turn with Formula One.
I'm enjoying the heck out of this, and nobody had to look out their window and ignore you to get that response. Right.